Before we begin this digital event, we want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. As many of us are watching in locations all around Australia, we pay our respects to the traditional owners of the country on which we all live and work. We recognise their continuing connection to land, waters, and community, and pay our respects to them and their culture, and to the elders both past, present, and future.
Welcome to a brand new episode of New Breakpoint. My name is Michelle Sandford and I'm part of the developer engagement team here in Australia, and I want to thank you for joining us from wherever you are. We've got our team on hand today to answer your questions in real time throughout the live session, so pop those burning questions in the chat. The best question will be answered by our guests at the end of the session, so make sure you stick around for that. If you want to learn more about what we've shared, keep an eye out for a link in the chat to all of today's resources. And we'll also be sharing a recording of today's show in the next 2 to 3 days, so keep an eye on your inbox. Now, I want to welcome today's guests. Andrew Jansen and Keith Taylor are joining us from the Australian Government's Supervising Scientist branch to share how they're using Azure Custom Vision AI to train data sets that help with monitoring fish populations. We're also joined by Microsoft's own Rupal from the FastTrack team, who worked closely with this team to build out the solution. Keith, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit more about your role and why this project is so important?
Thanks, Michelle, and it's great to be here today as a part of New Breakpoint. I'm Keith Taylor, the Supervising Scientist with the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment. The Supervising Scientist was established in 1978 to ensure the protection of Kakadu National Park from the effects of uranium mining. Kakadu is a very special place. Its dual World Heritage listing recognises Kakadu's cultural and environmental values. Kakadu has been home to people for 65,000 years, has the most diverse freshwater fish communities in Australia, and supports 1/3 of all Australian bird species. The Ranger uranium mine operated next to Kakadu from 1980 until it closed in January of this year. The Supervising Scientist conducts a long-standing environmental monitoring program around Ranger to detect and prevent any impacts of mining. I'm pleased to be able to report that throughout that time, our monitoring program has shown that Kakadu has remained protected. The monitoring of freshwater fish communities is a key part of our wider monitoring program. For many years, we would count fish through a clear bowl in a small boat in the deeper billabongs, and we would place pop-up fish traps into the shallow billabongs. However, the increasing risk of crocodile attack in recent years has required a change in our monitoring techniques. We now use a combination of underwater video cameras and airborne imagery to conduct our monitoring. Whilst being much safer, the use of video created in excess of 300 hours of footage to process for each sampling event. To address the workload issues created by these volumes of video, we have been collaborating with Microsoft to use artificial intelligence to automate fish identification, a system we successfully operationalised for the first time in the field this year. The application of this technology and the significant support provided to us by Microsoft has allowed us to keep our staff safe and continue our important monitoring work in Kakadu National Park. I'd like to say thanks again to Michelle and to Microsoft for the opportunity to be part of New Breakpoint. And I'll leave you now with Andrew Jansen, a member of our fish monitoring team and our artificial intelligence lead, to talk in more detail about how we have built our artificial intelligence programs to identify fish in Kakadu National Park.
Thanks. I've got a background in environmental science, and I've been involved in the monitoring program of fish communities at Kakadu National Park, and also in the method development components of that. And I guess it's become really important as we're developing methods and using new technologies, and we're changing the data type and complexity and size that we're collecting. We really need to use Azure, cloud computing, and new methods for processing that data to be able to get the best information possible out of it. This project is all about trying to use artificial intelligence to automate fish species identification, and it's our project called BruvNet. So for any AI project, we need to generate a training data set, and that's where we started. So we need to get images of fish and annotate and label them, train a neural network, and then use that neural network to automate the identification of fish in that imagery. So when we started this project, there was no training data sets available for tropical freshwater fish species up in Kakadu or Northern Australia. So we had to generate our own training data set. So there's a few ways that you can generate imagery or annotate and label. So you could use image classification, where you just tag the image with the species of that fish. There's object detection, where you can draw a box around every fish in the image. Or there's semantic or instant segmentation, where you draw a polygon around each fish in the image. And there's pros and cons to the three different approaches here. With semantic or instant segmentation, it takes a lot longer to get polygons around every image of the fish, but you're going to get higher performance when you're training a neural network. Image classification, on the other end, it takes a lot longer to generate that training data set. It takes a lot shorter, to generate that training data set, but you're not going to get as high performance that you would get with polygons. And then object detection is sitting in the middle. So if we look at the videography that we're collecting, and the whole purpose behind this whole program is to, characterize the whole fish assemblage. So see what fish are there and in what numbers. So we put cameras out into a range of different billabongs, and you can see here there's a range of different water conditions that the video is collected in. So some waters might come out and they appear really orange and turbid. They might come out looking green, or they might come out really clear, like down the bottom here. And as you'll notice, the fish here, they move in three-dimensional space. So you're going to get a range of species. They might be at the back of the image, or they might be up the front. They have different morphology, so different shapes and sizes. They might be looking one way, looking the other way. So we really need to capture all that variation in a training data set. So from the three different labeling types that I just spoke through, we picked object detection as our first run of trying to get a training data set, because it's sort of down the middle, and all the fish in the images here are sort of by themselves. So we thought the bounding boxes would perform quite well. So just to give you a quick high-level view at the architecture, so we have a data source, underwater cameras from our cameras that we've put into the billabong, and all the videos on a hard drive. We use some open source tools to convert those videos into images that we can label and put them all into storage. And then our main tool that we used here is Azure Custom Vision for our labeling and training, which I'll get into shortly. And then we can either push the models out into a cloud instance, or we can export the models into a range of formats like TensorFlow. And then finally, when we get new imagery, we were using Azure Batch to scale scoring of unseen imagery across multiple VMs and really be able to leverage the power of the cloud. So custom vision was chosen because it sort of had two components and two benefits. All the image labeling and all the model training can be done within this one tool. And we wanted to generate a training data set quickly, sort of go for that low code or no code approach, and be able to train and then look at the performance in a quick manner, so then we can use that to inform how we would do our next set of labeling. So if you look at Custom Vision, you go to Custom Vision AI, and this is the tool. So you can open a new project, you could give it a title, connect it to a resource, and you can pick what type of classification or object detection, the type of labeling you want to do. So we would do object detection for bounding boxes, and then you can pick what type of model you want to train. So either a cloud general model or a compact model that you could export. And then you simply just hit create project, and this is the interface of the tool. So you want to start adding images, so you just click add images, and if we go here, you can pick an image from your desktop, and upload the file. And there it is as an untagged image. So you can come in here and custom vision will, do predictions based on models that it has in the background. So you can draw a box, give it a species name, get that right, and then label all the pictures of fish in your image. And we'll miss one here. And then when it's done, you just close it, and then it'll move from the untagged into the tagged folder. So once we got to here, we wanted to bring a lot of our data in and start generating a training data set. So just to give you a quick idea of the size and volume of data that we're working with. So we've got videos collected from multiple years in multiple billabongs. So this is an example of one billabong. So we go to a billabong, we put out 5 transects. Within each transect, there's 10 cameras. And then for every camera, we've got 6 to 10 MP4 files with about 90 minutes of video. So you can sort of picture the scale. And if we add it all up, we're sort of nudging over 20 terabytes of videos that we wanted to pull apart and push into custom vision as a training data set. So we weren't going to play a video, take a screenshot and push it in like I did manually just then. So we used some open source tools to write a script to extract the frames from the video and push them into the custom vision project. So we pulled out about 1.5 million frames, used that naming convention that we've got here, so year, billabong, transect, location, so we could track all that metadata and give each image a unique name. And we use this script here so we can pick out a frame, how many frames per second. So if there's 60 frames per second and we pull out all 60 frames, it would be well over 60 million frames that we would put in. So we specify that and just take 1 frame every second, and that was sort of suitable to extract enough images of fish to use for a training data set. So once we pushed all those into a custom vision project, this is what it looks like. So here's one I prepared earlier, and these are all the fish have already been lagged. So we pushed in about 45,000 images of fish. And if you open it up, you can see this is a labeled fish. And then once we've got our data set generated, you can train straight within the tool. So you can do a quick train, which does just a shorter version like the name suggests, or you can do an advanced training. You can play around with your budget and you can specify up to 24 hours and even get it to send you an email when it's finished. So then once we've trained a model, you can then do a quick test. So you can pull in an image from your computer. So we'll pull in that rainbow fish image I had before, and then you can get that model that you just trained to do a live prediction like it's doing now. And you can see here, it's picked up these 4 fish, this one here, there's another one here. Maybe the bounding boxes would have overlapped and it wasn't confident in putting a label to it. So that's sort of custom vision, a quick look. So once we got our model trained, we wanted to then go in and score unseen imagery. So again, we use some open source tools, and what we really wanted to do was take a new video that the model hadn't seen, score it, and we wanted it to return for every second of video what species it detected, how confident it was in those predictions, and write it to a CSV file. But then we also wanted images of all those predictions so we can understand what it's actually putting bounding boxes around. So you can see here's put a box around that fish, which is good, and not around any of the background material. So in the script that is shown here, you just specify your custom vision project, give it the project ID and what model that you want to score. And then we also threshold all of the species so that it's only giving predictions over a certain level for each class to sort of, to tease out that data a bit better. And then we can also then score a video like you can see here. That's a sooty grunter swimming around. So as you can see here, a lot of the imagery I've shown you has been a single fish. And we saw just in that example of custom vision before that prediction, when you start to get lots of fish in an image, the bounding boxes performance tends to drop. So this is a point in the project where we sort of realized we needed to pivot. So if we'll watch this one again. And this is where we started pushing the cameras into new habitat, and we were getting a lot of imagery, like you can see here, with lots of fish in the scene, overlapping each other, and the bounding boxes performance started to drop. So we thought, okay, we need to start generating a polygon labeled data set so we can do instant segmentation to segment out all the fish. And this is a high-level look at the architecture that we use. So we had to change the way that we were approaching this problem. So again, we got the same data source. We used open source tools to get all the frames out of the video. But then at this point, what we could do is we could use that custom vision model to just do a prediction of fish or no fish. So when it would score a video, all the hours of empty frames where there's no fish in the scene, it could do a prediction, and if there's no fish, it could just delete it. So then we've just got a storage folder with all pictures of fish that we could then use for labeling. And because custom vision didn't support at the time polygons, we used VOT, which I'll get into in a second. And we used Azure Machine Learning Service to train our models, which we could also publish as a cloud instance or export. So we're using Detectron 2 as a architecture. And again, we use Azure Batch to scale that processing of new unseen imagery. So we thought to generate a polygon labeled data set, it's a lot more time consuming. And we were trying to think, how can we get some engagement with the project and get some help from others? So that's where we created a citizen science aspect to our BruvNet project. So it sort of had two components as well. We had an image labeling challenge where we would take the storage containers with all these discrete data sets of fish images that we had to put polygons around and push them out to citizen scientists to help us do the annotating around each fish. But then we also would need our fish ecologists to go in and do that quality control and see what the citizen scientist has done, and then make sure that the labels are correct as well. So what we did was we have a website for our BruvNet project, and we have an image labeling challenge. So you can come onto this website, you can get all the information on how to get started, how to get a data set, how to do the labeling. From all our custom vision work, we sort of developed some intuition around the best practices for labeling of fish. So you can get some guidance on that. You can see all the species that you're likely to encounter if you want to have a go at putting a species name onto the annotation. And then here's just a sort of to give you an idea of the number of species we're looking at. This is a classification tree of the fish we're likely to encounter. So like I said, we would have a discrete data set that we could push out to citizen scientists, and the labeling tool we're using is VOT. So VOT is a Microsoft product, and it's just a simple web-based labeling tool. So what you can do is you can create a connection, give it a display name of whatever you like, and connect to an Azure Blob storage container. So you just give it an account name, container name, and a SAS token. And if somebody has those credentials, they can connect to a container of images. So then once you've created your connection, you can connect to a cloud project or create a new one. And here's one set up previously. So when they would open it, this is what they get, all the images in that folder. And you can get started pretty much straight away with labeling images of fish. So I'll do a rough one on this glass fish. And this is where, a bulk of the time is spent generating a polygon labeled data set, give it a species name, and then move on to the next. So once we generated a big enough training data set, and like you were saying, the architecture before, we were using Detectron 2 and Azure Machine Learning Service to do our model training. So this is the architecture, and it supports instant segmentation. So we're using Jupyter Notebooks in Azure Machine Learning Service, and I'll just quickly run through how that looks. So you can import your training data set, and you can also import evaluation data set, and we just want to quickly check that you import it, register it, quickly just have a look and make sure your species are there. And we've got 9 species in this data set here, and then you can import and register your evaluation data set to test it against. Just want to quickly have a look and visualize the annotations that we've just registered, and it looks good. It looks like what somebody would have labeled. And then train our Detectron 2 model. So, we import some dependencies, connect to an instance segmentation model. So we're using mask RCNN, so import the configuration and bring in some model weights. And then we can specify some parameters. So number of iterations, so how long we want to train for, the learning rate. We can specify the number of classes. And then once you start training, you'll get some information about the model, the architecture, the convolutional layers. It'll tell you how many images you put in, and then start training each iteration. So this one here took 6 hours, and for every iteration you get some information about the metrics of performance. So once you've fully trained your model, this one took 6 hours and 36 minutes. You can view the performance, so all these metrics, you can plot them in TensorBoard. But then we just wanted to quickly, make a prediction from that model and see how it performed. So we just register the model weights that we just trained and just find a random image in the data set to score. And you can see here straight away the instance segmentation model and the benefit that we're looking for is already sort of happening, where you can see that the caudal fin on this glassfish, the line goes around the rainbow fish in the background. The boxes are overlapping each other, but the polylines are going around each other. Similarly here with this fish here, you can see again same result. So once we trained our Detectron 2 model, we used the same sort of process for scoring unseen test imagery. So we had 650,000 frames a year that we're going to score against that model, and we just use that same script, except point the model towards our Detectron model, and again get back pictures of all the scored fish and write out every second of footage to a CSV file. And then just to give you an example, this is some live video scored of the AI in action. Scoring all the different species. And then I wanted to end on here is sort of this project's still active, and you can go and look at our GitHub repo, and you can even register for a data set to label images of fish. But sort of where we landed at the end of this project and what we realized was there's a few components to it. There's this sort of data collection of collecting videos, and there's a way we can standardize annotating and labeling using best practices to get the best result, because you can get bogged down at this stage and annotate and label wrong and wonder why your model's not performing well. But really all of this is and the results that you get out of it is all dependent on this data set that you generate. There's different pipelines and models we can train, and there's different applications in research, commercial or competitions, but none of it's possible without this golden data set that's in a good format. It's high quality. The species are the actual species that it's been trained on. So to move forward, we want to try and collate and put all the different training data sets together. Doesn't matter if it's freshwater or marine species, put them all into one space, and as well as the models, and collaborate more with our partners and try and build the largest training data set that can be used for all these different applications.
Wow. I don't know. I don't think I would ever get bored watching that, Andrew. That's an amazing demo. Every time I see you explain it to me, you go deeper and deeper into more stuff. It's yeah, I love it. Thank you. Now, how did your team get involved in this?
Yeah, so it was a very, very interesting journey. Where it all started was with the NP fisheries in the Northern Territory state government in shark-infested waters of Darwin Harbour. So their mission was to count the fish in the harbour using the BRUV, which is the dated remote underwater video, which also the SSB used, and ensure that the resources are sustainably managed and developed for the future, right, for the fishing side of things. So they worked with our FTA engineer, Steve Van Bodegraven, to successfully identify about 15 species to start with. And they also did a media story with us. So the anti-fisheries media story caught the attention of Andrew from the SSB branch, and who was struggling with a similar challenge of environment management. And this initiated our engagement with Microsoft's machine learning and data science lead and the FTA. Right, so Andrew, Steve pulled in a couple of other engineers, which also helped, like Chris, Wama, and Valerie, which also came together with Andrew's team to actually build out the use case which they needed. So that's how the FastTrack team got involved and started helping. So from Darwin Harbour and saltwater fish, we cut across now to freshwater fish in Kakadu National Park and its billabongs. And what was the most exciting thing is the thing that they were wanting to share this with the rest of the world and make a kind of a repeatable pattern, right, for the fishery scientists, which were drowning in the BRUV videos, right? There were huge amounts of videos which they couldn't wade through manually. And now with Andrew's work and, with the help of our engineers, we have this pattern which they can use, and they're ready to share it. So that's the most exciting part.
Perhaps I was a bit hasty there, though, because maybe our viewers do not know what the FastTrack team is and how they get involved with things normally. Perhaps you could just clarify that a little bit.
Oh, definitely. So I'm the program manager from FastTrack for Azure. So FastTrack for Azure is a customer-facing Azure engineering team, which provides tailored guidance from Azure engineers and helps you leverage proven practices and architectural guides effectively for your use case. So it's a tailored guidance. So we are based near to the customer. So our team is based out of Asia region, and we have multiple engineers across. The way you can nominate us is go Google FastTrack for Azure and just nominate from there. And you can reach out to us that way, and one of our program managers will contact you. So that's how it's a normal nomination process. With Andrew, it was more the media story which triggered that. So that was awesome.
That's cool. That's very cool. Andrew, this is great with the fish, but I do find fish a little bit scary. Are there other things that you're using it for, or you're thinking of using it for, that aren't fish?
Yeah. So after seeing the benefits and efficiencies we can gain from using it with fish, the patterns and the architecture and the structure we can replicate for many other things. So we immediately, our work runs a pretty significant drone program, and we're adapting those same methods and techniques to analyzing drone imagery. So in some of the pictures you would have seen there's lots of vegetation in the background behind the fish. So what we'll do is we'll fly a drone over the billabong, and there's lots of vegetation that sits in the billabong, and we'll map it with cameras, and then we're trying to apply the same methods to use AI to classify all that vegetation, and then also extend it out to trees in the surrounding environment and classify tree species from drone imagery.
And just a quick one that I'm sure is occurring to everyone. Did you get to fly any of those drones?
Yes, I have.
Well, that's cool, because toys are important.
Yeah.
But I suppose they're not toys at your level. They must be super expensive, those drones, huh?
Yeah, they can range, but same with using the underwater cameras. All that technology is coming down in price, and we're able to pick it up easier and apply it to lots of different applications.
Cool. Okay, so stick around, everyone, because Andrew will be answering some of your questions in just under a minute. Liked what you saw today? We've put a survey in the chat and would love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Microsoft AU Dev to keep up to date with what we have in store for this season. And you can also see today's full debug log via the link we've just popped in the chat. So thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you next time on New Breakpoint. Let's see what questions we've got, and we'll bring in Keith and Andrew to help answer them.